In this next fight, we have a middleweight fight, and both these guys are going to be looking to bounce back from their first career losses in the UFC. And I would pull out all the stops to win this fight if I'm Jacob Malkoun or Nick Maximov, because I could see the loser of this fight potentially being cut. Both these fighters are effective, but they have the same style, constant takedowns, grinding, and that style isn't conducive to fan-friendly fights. I wouldn't be surprised if UFC put these two guys together so they could cut the loser. Malkoun so far is 2-2. He's definitely fought the vastly superior competition. He's fought guys like Brendan Allen, Phil Haas, Abdulrazak Al-Hassan. All those guys have been ranked in the UFC at one point or another. And his last fight with Brendan Allen was a close fight that he could have won, but was on the wrong end of a close decision. So he's been competitive with solid guys. He was able to get the win over Abdulrazak Al-Hassan. And Nick Maximov, he's been fighting lower level competition. He began the UFC 2-0, but he beat Cody Brunage and Puna Soriano, who both aren't extremely impressive wins. I suppose that Soriano is a decent victory, but Maximov's last fight did not go as planned. He had some heat and build-up between himself and Andre Petrosky. They were talking some shit before the fight, but Maximov got caught in an anaconda choke before the fight even got started, really. Lost in 1 minute and 16 seconds. And he has to bounce back, look for a good performance after a fight like that. And both these guys are grapplers. I would argue that Maximov is superior on the ground with his jiu-jitsu for sure. Probably the better wrestler too. I think Malkoun's stand-up is more advanced. He has a good jab, but he's shorter, he's smaller than Maximov, and I don't think that he has the speed to keep Maximov at range with that jab, nor the power to kind of keep him at bay. I think Maximov, he's kind of gritty, he has okay boxing, and he's going to be able to use his size to kind of use the striking to force the wrestling. And I see him being able to win the scrambles, control on top, and win the fight that way. Malkoun does good against opponents, usually that he can out-grapple. And in his last fight with Brendan Allen, you saw him in there with the grappler, and he had some issues at certain points in the fight. Even though he got quite a few takedowns and some control time, he also got reverse controlled, and he didn't really have much success on the ground in terms of ground and pound or submission damage. And with Nick Maximov, I just think that the height, being 5'9" to 6 foot, is going to play a big difference in on the feet in Nick Maximov's ability to close that distance, and Malkoun not being able to use the jab that successfully. I also think Maximov is the better athlete, and him being the bigger guy is going to help him win the wrestling and the grappling scrambles. I think that he has a really high jiu-jitsu acumen, and even though he did get caught in his last fight with the anaconda, I don't really think there's a big submission threat in there with Jacob Malkoun. And I also think Maximov just kind of got caught sleeping with Petrosky, almost literally, I guess. But he kind of just didn't take Petrosky seriously on the ground and paid for it. With Jacob Malkoun, I don't see him making that mistake, for one. And for two, I don't see Malkoun being able to lock in a submission like that. I don't really see him as a big submission threat. And I just feel like Nick Maximov is able to grind. He's not going to get tired like Malkoun has gotten some of his other opponents tired. And he can beat Malkoun the way that Malkoun beats other fighters. I think he's going to be able to out-grapple him, take his back, get in some dominant positions, and end up winning the fight by decision. Malkoun, for him to win, I think he's going to need to keep it standing, pressure, stuff the takedowns, use the jab, and try to box. And that's not usually his style. So I think this is stylistically a fight where they're trying to get Nick Maximov the win. I think he obviously, to me, there's still more stock in Nick Maximov than Jacob Malkoun, even though both have kind of that boring style. Nick Maximov, a little more marketable. He has the Nate Diaz, Nick Diaz thing behind him, and I also feel like he is a little bit better of a talker. So I think that they would rather Malkoun take the loss here, and I think Nick Maximov is going to win the decision. So I'm going to go with Maximov for this one to bounce back, get the win.